next story kind of makes me sad. I don't know if it makes you sad.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So listen, LG, Lucky Goldstar, which is what LG stands for, by the way.
I did not know that. Is that really what it?
Yep.
Lucky Goldstar?
That is true. Yeah, because when the first LG phones dropped in this year country, they dropped on Verizon, and I was one of their first customers. And I used a specific program at Verizon where I would call up customer service, complain about the service. They would give me the phone for $100, whatever the price was of the phone, and then give me a credit to go along with it. So I got it for free.
Nice.
Yeah. And I remember the guy going, well, it's a Lucky Gold Star something or other, and I couldn't get on the computer to look it up because I was using the phone. It was dial-up. So, and we only had the one line.
That is awesome.
LG may be exiting the smartphone space, and let me tell you why it's sad to me. I've been a long-time user of LG's goods and services.
Yeah.
I have had I switched from the year the exploding Note came out. I'd switched to a Nexus device, and I went from Nexus to LG's V10 series, and I've had every single V series phone they've ever come out with ever since then. And this is the LG Wing, as I just displayed here. It has a slide-out screen. I'm doing it backwards so you people don't see my notifications. But this big man edits these videos, and I know he doesn't know how to blur anything yet.
No.
So I just think I think what's interesting to talk about here is we are going from Ford, GM, and then Chrysler to it's just going to be Samsung and Apple at this point. Really,
well,
that's all it's going to be.
Samsung, Google, and Apple, right? Samsung, Google, and but here, look.
Yeah, but Google, no one buys the Google. Google does not have. Google's phones are not a commodity the same way Samsung Android phones are.
No, and I agree with you there, but they're always going to be in the market. Here's what I like. I read this headline a couple of days ago, and I'm glad that you added this to the list today because the headline to me says it all. It says LG leaving the phone market isn't good for anyone except LG. And it's the truth. If you really dig down into this, LG has always made a good phone. Android gave them a horrible product to go on their phone, which has been one of the issues, like you alluded to, right? The using of the LG phone. The LG phone, like a car manufacturer, you've got the mechanics of the car, right? The engine, the transmission, the stuff.
Right.
And then you have how it looks. Two completely different things, right? The LG always made a good phone. It was like having a great engine in a nice car that had a bad operating system, right?
Yeah.
Because Android wasn't giving it the full Android because it wasn't an Android phone.
Yeah,
right?
It was an Android phone.
Well, but I mean, it wasn't a... My point is the software that ran on LG phones, especially in the beginning, wasn't the software that were available on other phones.
Yeah, that's true.
It had an inferior product on a Corvette engine, right? And that I think that hurt it in the long run.
Your analogy is... a garbage
maybe
analogy.
It's just a bad
It's a
analogy.
dumpster fire.
Okay, it's a dumpster fire.
Your analogy is a dumpster fire.
The point is they got a bad rep from the go. Is that what they say?
Right.
There you go. Okay.
Well, okay.
They didn't
I don't
have
know
an
what
equal
you're
footing.
talking about. What's that?
They didn't have equal footing, is my point.
Okay. Well, that may or may not be true. I don't know what you're talking about.
Here's the real point I was trying to get to, though.
Okay.
The real point
Finally,
is
get to your
they've
point
never
this
made
year.
a ton of money making phones. It's highly competitive. They're never going to, as you said, compete in today's market. And there was a quote that I like here because I use I like the wording that they use. It says the three companies that own all the mind share, right? Mind share is the key word here, that make all the profits are Apple, Google, and Samsung. And mind share is the key here, right? LG probably has just as many phones as Samsung has out, but they're not making the money because you don't go into a store going, hey, I want the newest LG.
Right. And here's what I will say, right? The reason I've been an LG phone user as long as I have is because they always cram it with the best top-of-the-line chip, okay? And they did not force me to use Bixby because that is when I transitioned from being a Samsung guy to being a LG person is because of Bixby. And I don't want, let me repeat, I don't want any of these assistants on my phone, right?
Right.
I don't even have I don't even have on my keyboard on my keyboard on the phone I don't even have like autocorrect because I don't want this thing learning how I type.
You are
So I
you are so like you are a closet, like, what is that called, like,
a
where you're just
luddite, a
whatever
luddite.
that. Okay, then fine.
Yeah, I'm not a
It
closet luddite. I love technology.
my point is that you love what technology brings you, but you battle against it constantly, right? Like,
Yeah,
I can't imagine why this tool exists to autocorrect. Why wouldn't you use it? The tool exists,
I'm
voice to
paranoid
speech,
about it. I'm paranoid.
and
I'm
that's where
not
it is. Your
closet. I'm
paranoia.
not
That is your
closeted paranoid.
paranoia.
I'm openly paranoid.
You're openly paranoid, but I don't
And
get it.
and soon on riselentless.com you will be able to buy a mug because only the paranoid survive. Be available very soon.
No,
We have
no,
a new
I'm
set of
not
drops
paranoid,
coming.
and I'll survive because
That's what
paranoid
we
and
think.
planning are two different things.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But
Zombie
I
apocalypse
listen,
happens tomorrow. I'll be here 5 days from now. Your butt won't. Look, the fact is, and the reason the headline exists, it's leaving. It's great for it's bad for everyone except for LG. LG makes way more money off of smart washing machines. They make way more
right.
money
And
off of these
fridges
smart refriges, right?
and TVs.
Televisions and stuff like
And
they
hey,
make so
guess
much
what?
money in other places.
Yeah, your favorite electric car company, Tesla. They use LG screens in their Model 3. LG, as a screen manufacturer, makes plenty of money. LG supplies screens to Sony sometimes,
Yes,
right?
LG was making solar panels. I don't know if they still
Yeah.
do, but they were making solar panels at one time. The point is they are making money hands over fist with all these other lines, and they thought that cell phones was going to be yet another one of those lines, and it just hasn't panned out. And sometimes you just got to cut the fat.
So, right. What I find interesting, though, is there are competing articles out there where the head of LG's mobility division is saying, we're not getting out of the business. We
Right.
are going to show a profit in 2021. We are here to stay, and we'll see. But what I think is more interesting about this story is this thing, this smartphone, okay? 15 years ago, I was one of the first smartphone people of my group of friends. They're like, oh my goodness, dude, I have a Razor. Why do you have such a big phone? Now, all of these ding dongs are attached to these things like they are the lifesavers.
Yep.
And
I was one of those on the opposite side of you. I was one of those idiots. I
Nope.
resisted the smartphone as long as
Right.
possible. Like, I went
So,
through the
again-
quirky keyboard stage,
Yep.
all of
Yep.
it.
So listen, let's recall who called who a Luddite here. I'm an early adopter of this technology. I love it. However, it's got to a point where the evolution every year, because CES and all this other stuff, there's no more evolution. It's just revolution. It's just minor, just little tweaks. And so we're getting to a point where uh the the supply, not the supply chain, but the buy cycle of
Right.
like if my parents didn't have a deal where I got them a new phone every year because they were in a lease deal, they could go 2 years or 3 years without getting a new phone and not
I
notice.
still do. But again,
I
they
know.
pushed this cycle on us. In the beginning, it was only every 2 or 3 years, and
Right.
then it came down, and now all of a sudden, it's got to not even a full year. You don't even get a full year before the next Samsung comes out, the next iPhone comes out. I mean, they push it just as quickly, the next version, and like you said, there doesn't seem to be a lot of hell. You can even say in some cases, especially with, again, iOS, iPhone, and I know you and I aren't big fans, that in
Right.
some fashions they regress in the next version, like
A
when they
little
took
bit,
away the
yeah.
3.5 head jack, right? And
Yeah.
stuff like that. They get these dumb decisions, and then they fix it on the next model, and maybe
Right.
that's why they do come out so often.
So like this device right here, like I said, is the LG Wing, has 3 cameras. I remember, I think it was the V10 or the V20 from LG had 2 cameras. And that was already a revolution, right? That was
Yeah.
like, holy crap, 2 cameras. Now we're at 3 cameras. Some of these Nokias, we're going to do a story about them next week. They have 4 cameras, 10 cameras. What are we doing here? Like, we-
I don't always understand why they add things. At the end of the day, when you're doing
Perceived
certain
value,
things,
big man.
perceived
Perceived
value.
value.
And I do understand that that's the point. Is I can say that it now has this, whether you use it or not ever, or you know what I mean, is irrelevant. But it has it, right? But again, I think for LG, and you're right, they keep going back and forth. There's nobody at LG that said they are definitely shutting down the phone market,
Right.
but there are definitely when these kind of stories come out, somebody's saying it. Like nobody outside of LG gives a crap enough to
Nobody's
say
guessing.
LG should get
Yeah.
out of the business. Somebody is saying something to somebody that says LG should get out of the business or is going to eventually. And the
And let me
president's job is
also,
to just say, "Hey, we're in it for the long haul. We're,
right. And you know what I find interesting is, the smartphone market went from Japan, Sony and those kinds of companies. And Sony was, by the way, for people who don't know, Sony was cited as the company that Apple ripped off for its most infamous iPhone 4, came from a Sony design, literally. And
It's
it
not
came out in a
surprising to
court
me. I
case.
didn't know that, but not surprising."
Right. So it shifted from Japan to South Korea, and now from South Korea to China, and now China and India, because some of the Chinese companies, India is rejecting them, and India and China is about to outpace India for population. Or at least it was pre Dos Equis. And China is now, or India rather, is going to be the market where the Chinese are like, holy crap, if we're not in India, we're doomed. But the Indian government is saying, we don't want your garbage. We want Indian produced
Right.
manufactured goods. So the Chinese companies and Taiwanese companies are now building factories in India to build phones, just like Apple is. But I just think it's interesting that in such a short time span, like 15 minutes in the grand scheme of human history, South Korea had this massive conglomeration and control over the smartphone market. And the last player that was giving Samsung any sort of competition is teetering on the brink of not existing in the
Right.
business. And that is crazy to me that I lived through Motorola stopping. They
I was
stopped
big into
mattering.
I was a big Motorola fan back in the day. I was a big, you know what I mean, Motorola fan. But again, you but I think that is the now and the future. I think you're going to see things come and go, and we talk about this almost every episode. Being nimble, being
Yeah.
able to listen to who's buying your product, who's listening to your product, who's using your product, and changing in category. And I think that's where you get look. LG's been around a long time, right?
Yeah. They're
That's
not
why they
going
make
anywhere.
that's why they make so many things and whatever.
Yeah.
So they've been around a long time, but a company that's been around that long isn't always necessarily great at listening to their audience. I mean, you look at a company like LG, they've been around long enough that there was a time that here you can only buy 3 different washers and dryers, right? There's only 3
Right.
companies that make them. You're gonna buy ours or you're not, and we may be the only ones selling in your area. So you want our
Right.
washer and dryer, you buy it, right? So there was a time and a place where that's not the way products work. You didn't have 50,000 choices and you
Right.
didn't have all these available. But in today's world and in the future, you've got to be nimble, you've got to change, and guess what? Having the best product doesn't always mean that it's the best received, right?
No.
That
Just because you have, and the reason I love LG is because they experimented with form factors. I just got that phone that I showed you guys a week ago. Before that, I had a phone that had a dual screen case. It was impossible to carry and clunky, and the UI was useless. So I only carried it with the one screen ever. But it was cool. The concept that I had 2 screens and it wasn't a dumb foldable with a huge vein going down the middle, and I was going to destroy it by poking it with my fat fingers. Actually, I have really beautiful, slender fingers. I could be a hand model.
I do not. But go
I
ahead.
know. But I just thought it was an interesting story because as we're seeing the Chinese market grow, and the middle of the pack is starting to really have really, really, really good hardware. And Android is so robust as an operating system that you really don't have to tweak it like when LG and Samsung first started making Android phones. They really had to tweak the operating system to make
Right.
it function, right? And they don't have to do that anymore. You can just plop stock Android onto something and it's great. So I just feel
Yeah.
like, and especially with the last administration, having a problem with one of the larger Chinese manufacturers. The South Korean option was really good because people were concerned about spying and so on and so forth. And I
Well,
just thought it was an interesting story.
losing competition, in my opinion. Now, again, I'm a capitalist. Losing competition is rarely good for an overall industry. Okay, LG leaving the phone market will not make everybody else better. It will make everybody else
No, it
worse.
won't.
Right?
Yeah,
If
and
your
listen,
phone market comes down to Samsung, iPhone, and let's just again keep Google in there because Google is Google and can do anything they want, right?
right?
If those are ultimately you can only get three different products,
Yeah,
it and they're only competing with each other, they really aren't even competing with each other anymore, right?
and let's leave out this. Let's not even mention the dark horse candidate in this regard, Microsoft. They were supposed to come out with a big. I think they might have come out. I don't even know. They were supposed to have a Surface phone. The Surface Duo was supposed to come out. I think it has launched, but because I just that's what I would have purchased actually. But I do think that if they want to kind of get into the Android business, because they have become a significant player in hardware,
Right.
their Surface phones and Surface laptops and Surface tablets are quality material. They're
Yes,
quality.
they
They're
are.
really good.
Yes, they are.
And if they want to get into the Android business as and skin Android with Microsoft's kind of vibe, I actually think they could be super successful. And I do think that they could not knock, but they could replace
LG, right?
LG
Yeah.
as that player. And Microsoft is not new to doing this. I mean, Microsoft initially approached Nintendo, said, "Hey, we're really good at doing hardware. We suck at everything else. Can we build you the next Nintendo system?" And Nintendo laughed in their face.
Oh
So
wow, I
Microsoft
didn't know
just
that.
came out. Yeah. Microsoft just came out with Xbox on its own after
Yeah.
having approached Nintendo and said, "Let us build it for you." And
Wow,
you
I didn't know
brand it
that.
as Nintendo. And they said, "We don't need you." And now Nintendo doesn't matter. Well,
Well,
Nintendo Switch, but
but that goes to my point is you're talking about a company like Microsoft, and when you get to the big players like this and you say, okay, you know what I mean, Google, Apple, Android, that kind of Samsung, it would take somebody like Microsoft to get into the industry. Now, we're not talking about Joe Bob over here starts a phone manufacturing company and can
right.
get it off the ground, right? That's the thing about when you get this big, it makes it harder for smaller people to move in that may be innovating, that may have come up with the next big
But
thing.
what's
That, you know what I
interesting
mean?
though is like cell phones, smartphones, and this is what I initially wanted to say and completely forgot. They're a commodity now,
Right.
right? We're at a point where if you go buy a $200 smartphone, you can walk into Best Buy, buy a $200 or $300 smartphone, and it's 70% as good as the $1,000 smartphone. And
Mm-hmm.
it's as good as $1,000 smartphone was 2 years ago. So
Well,
somebody
and the
walking,
technology may only be that 18 months to 2 years old.
yes. So and that's what is kind of where we're at because I bought this phone with a slightly slower processor than my other phone. It's just as fast. So
Right. Your user experience, right, is
yeah,
just as fast. They make this with TVs and stuff like that, right? Your eye can only see so much. And, processing.
yeah.
I used
I
to
don't
make this
want
argument on
8K,
computer.
dude. I
Yeah.
don't want freaking 8K. 1080p as high as I'm going. That's
Right.
it.
Look, again, usage, right? That kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But again, I just want to see a marketplace where things get
The
better.
aliens are using 8K.
And I'm going to say this just at the end of this, just to make sure that I get this out there, because I believe this is. I think this argument of what goes into this phone also has a very short shelf life in the near future. Cloud computing is where all this stuff goes. In the very near future, you're going to be paying cloud computing to do this, and what you're buying this becomes really inexpensive because it's just what you're carrying in your pocket. Everything that happens on this is controlled somewhere else
Is that like a
because
3-year-old S9?
this is a Samsung S9 Plus. All right. Again, I told you I keep my phones forever.
I
My
know you
point though
do.
is that's the future, right? That's the outline that's going in. What you carry in your pocket will have next to nothing and it'll be super cheap and super cheap to replace. And what you'll be paying for is what's happening somewhere else.
Nah,
That's the
I
future.
disagree. I disagree.